Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can listen to the show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And again, you can always find this on my YouTube channel and also on iTunes and RSS feed. So if you are new to the show and you that is your preferred method, then please do go to iTunes and leave me a review if you like the show. I guess you can leave me a review if you don't like the show too. That's fine. But anyway, very excited. Today I am joined, of course, by my good friend and frequent guest on the show, Tom Secker, and we are going to be discussing this is our second episode on Homeland Season 6. So this is the Homeland Season 6 Part 2. I know that originally Tom and I had promised to get this out at the mid-season break, or, midway through the season. But we got a little, waylaid with all sorts of other things. But I think this is actually better than if we had done it around episode 6 or 7, because now we've got 3 really great episodes to talk about. We're going to be talking about the past couple episodes. So this would be like episode 8, 9, and 10 for me. Although I guess we can talk about some of the earlier ones. But those are the 3 that I really kind of focused on, because those are the 3 that I had not watched until last night. But anyway, Tom Secker, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, haven't we actually done, isn't this our 3rd episode on this season of Homeland? Didn't we do one about 4 weeks ago? Because we did one after episode 1.
Yes.
And I thought we did another one after about episode 4, 5.
Did we?
I think
we might have.
In any case, we're now looking at episodes like 7 to 10 or something.
Yeah.
We're looking at where this is going, kind of after the midpoint curve of the season, but we still don't know quite where this is going. That's what's so fascinating about this season, is that it's better than most seasons of Homeland. In fact, probably the best of all of them at, the usual thing of we've got half a dozen spinning plates, but they've kept them all spinning. They're all still pretty interesting and pretty integrally involved and kind of now coming together in different ways. The different storylines are coming together, but we still don't really know what's going to happen in the next couple. So I'm looking forward to talking about this tonight, but I'm also looking forward to the next couple of episodes and the conversation we'll have in 2-3 weeks' time, trying to figure out what the hell this season was about.
Yeah, we've got there. So for people keeping score at home, there are 2 more episodes left. The episode 11 is R is for Romeo, which I assume is probably, code for the operation that we'll get to that has been building. And then the last episode, aptly named America First. So that will be a very exciting, the titles of the episodes this season have really been good and very kind of spot on. So, the first episode, Fair Game, which of course will, I think, faithful listeners of the CIA in Hollywood will be familiar with that name. That's the name of the Valerie Plame movie.
Yeah.
There was the episode 8, which was a great alt.truth, which is a wonderful title name, and then episode 9, Sock Puppets, another great name. Very very, very descriptive names for the Homeland this year. But anyway, Tom, it has been a little while since we last talked about Homeland. A lot has been going on. I guess just looking at episode 8, because that's sort of where I had most recently picked up. We've now got Quinn has been ferried away to some house in upstate New York. At the behest of Dar Adal. He's now joined by Astrid, the wonderful Nina Haas from last season. Or no, 2 seasons.
And the end of season 4 is where she first turns up. Yeah.
And she is sort of there taking care of Quinn and sort of looking after him. Dar Adal has somehow sort of gotten him out of New York, where he's, obviously he's wanted in connection with the shooting and possibly terrorism and whatnot. And he's up there, and Carrie's daughter has been taken away by child services. Kind of boring. We didn't really like that whole storyline. I hate saying it, but I hate Franny. I don't really, she's sort of irrelevant. She's this constant reminder of Brody, which, as much as I love Brody and all of that, I don't really need, I just don't want to know. Or I don't want to have to think about him all the time. Hanging from a crane in Iran or something. But anyway, we find out what I've really found interesting is we finally, after 6 seasons, we're finally figuring out a little bit about who Dar Adal is and how much of a sort of impact he's having on all of the events that are playing out in this season. So one of the sort of really creepy things is we find out that Dar Adal is maybe something of a pedophile or, likes him rather young, maybe 15, 16. Not that that's okay, but
I think it's certainly not okay given that at the time Dar Adal would have been, 40, 50.
Oh yeah, well I'm just saying it's not like they're not babies, but yeah, obviously this is dark,
preying on young, vulnerable people. That much is certainly true,
including Quinn. We find out that he was molesting Quinn, that he had some sort of that this might explain the sort of weird, complex relationship that the two of them seem to have, although it's never been alluded to previously. And that he, I guess, the whole idea is that Quinn is an orphan, or it's been alluded to that, and that Dar Adal found him, which is again very reminiscent of ideas that have been put out in CIA sponsored films and TV shows. That, they do recruit very young, like that. And we find out that, this is Dar Adal and him have this, very nasty history together. Anything you made on that, Tom? I know it's been alluded to that Dar Adal in one season was a heroin addict. Now he's a pedophile. Should we make anything of this, or is this just another sort of feather in his very complicated hat?
Good way of putting it. I think it's probably more the latter. I think it's also, I think that's something they probably put in there because they made this quite big, bold decision that they're going to bring back Quinn for this season, having actually killed him off at the end of last season.
Yeah.
So they, hastily rewrote that and rebooted the series, brought back Quinn, and he's kind of the central character of this season. He's had an awful lot of screen time, if you think about it. Throughout this whole season, most of the stuff's actually revolved around him, and we've probably got to see more of him than we have of anyone else, I think. And he is a very sympathetic character and a really fine actor. I mean, I know we've said this before, but I think he's great. So I think that particular little bit of dialogue, that whole conversation between him and Dar Adal on the edge of the lake, none of the plot hinged on that. That was more just telling us about the characters themselves and developing both of their characters and their relationship and actually making that somewhat clear, which, like you say, previously, we always knew Quinn was always introduced. He was a member of Dar Adal's group.
Right, that's our first introduction to him.
The thing, this group that we don't really know who the hell they're working for. And we still, is it really clear what role is Dar Adal playing here? Is he the director of the CIA now?
I don't know. I don't think so. Although
no, I don't think so either, but they don't explicitly say one way or another. So I think that moment is primarily dramatic. I don't think there's anything particularly political that they're trying to say or whatever with that revelation. I mean, I was, raised my eyebrows when I watched that scene. I was like, I don't know where they're going with this. But I guess, yeah, it's about Dar Adal. They've made him a bigger character over time.
Yeah.
And now he's basically running everything. He is the ghost in the machine in this season. So, like I say, if they've made this creative decision that it's going to be less about Carrie and Saul, and it's going to be more about Quinn and, by extension, Dar Adal, they've got to build those characters a bit more. They've got to give us a bit more to go on. And also, I guess, Dar Adal's the bad guy. In as much as there is a bad guy in this season, Dar Adal is presumably the one we're supposed to be hoping that he gets taken down in some way, shape or form. And that's kind of a hangover from, you remember the end of season 4 where he makes the big deal with the,
Haqqani.
Yeah, with Haqqani. Yeah, with the real life Haqqani. And that was never resolved. Saul just sort of went along with it. Carrie walked away from the CIA at that point. He never got any comeback from that. He never got any, there was no downfall for this pretty catastrophic decision. And so I guess we're supposed to be rooting for Quinn to succeed over Dar Adal in this season?
Yeah.
At least that's where I'm going with it. So I think maybe, again, that little scene, that little bit of dialogue, it just makes us think, Christ, Dar Adal, you're not only a Machiavellian murderer who runs a secret assassination team that operates in pretty much every country on the planet, you also prey on mid-teenagers who are, in a lot of places that would be completely illegal, in order to help you recruit them, or is it actually just
it's
kind of pervy old fuck,
Yeah, I know. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's because he is a sick pervert, who, we never really see him have any love interests or anything of that nature. So obviously,
never has a normal relationship with anyone.
No. So yeah, I think it's a matter of he's a pedophile, but also it is in a cynical way. It's his way of maintaining absolute control over these young men. I assume this is how he was able to convince Quinn to do all sorts of god awful things for him. Is through this very complicated, manipulation and brainwashing of him when he was a young boy. Moving away from Dar Adal's, peculiar nature for a moment, the other big thing, obviously, there are two big things that happen. Quinn really fucks up and ends up being responsible for killing the only person that really truly loved him, and that is Astrid. I was really upset to see Astrid die. I fell in love with her as a character back when they were in Pakistan. I loved that Quinn and her had this strange, relationship together, that they were in love with one another. I just love, Nina Hoss is beautiful. There's something like really, magnetic about her as a character. And she really is the only person that actually loves and cares about Quinn. I don't really think Carrie loves Quinn, I think she feels bad for Quinn.
No, I think Dar Adal is right about that. I think this is all, Carrie's doing this out of sheer guilt.
Guilt, exactly.
That's not what it's not about her affection really for Quinn anymore. Whereas Astrid, you can see she still loves this guy. Even though she leaves Germany to come and stay with him. She even stays after he assaults her. He punches her in the gut and knocks her out. And she's still willing to stay. And then she is murdered by, one of Dar Adal's groupies, who's, the guy that was living across the street from Carrie, who also helped set up the bombing in New York. And he sort of does this unilaterally. And there's a moment where he says something like there were other opinions that mattered. So perhaps there's even, let's get into that, because we're now starting to see, that Dar Adal is really running like a parallel CIA, that he is, the Dar Adal group or whatever is really kind of pulling the strings behind everything. And they're behind the bombing. They're behind whatever they're planning in that house that we've seen. Okay, here's a question. Right. The big revelation in the most recent episode is, I assume, the van. That when Quinn breaks into this or sneaks into this house where the group stays and hangs out in between missions, he goes into the garage and he finds this van that has the same logo painted on the side as the van that Secker was driving, which blew up in episode 3 or 4, whatever it was. Why would they have a van with the same logo on, just sitting around in the garage?
Well, doesn't he? I think Quinn says that that's the real van and that they switched it out.
It still doesn't make sense that you'd keep it. You just go and drive it to an abandoned industrial park and burn it. I just think that's one of those moments where they've kind of skipped over the real logic here just to provide the narrative with a point to get to that, they can reveal, the van's there. It's these guys who actually blew up Secker and they're responsible for everything. And thus Dar Adal is responsible for everything. But no, I mean, the most important part of this entire season, or most interesting part, is the fake news, the sock puppets. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, well, we have this character, Brett O'Keefe, which is, he's really channeling Alex Jones. The actor who plays him is phenomenal. I mean, spot on, the best impersonation or the best sort of constructed character of Alex Jones. And he has this alternative, news, radio show, TV show, just like Alex Jones, where he's sitting in the chair at the desk with his background. He's yelling. He's got the same kind of mannerisms and tone in his voice. And throughout the season, we've had various different people listening to him. So at one point, Quinn becomes very obsessed with him, and is, sort of sitting alone after his crack binge, just listening to him. We've got the woman who, I don't know, is also hired by Dar Adal to keep the president-elect company or watch over her. She's listening to him, and there are other people that are listening to him. And at first, he appears to be, on the surface, Alex Jones, and he gets a bunch of other guys from the president-elect's her son's platoon. He gets a bunch of them, and they all start saying that he's a coward. And that scene reminded me of the Fox News Bo Bergdahl coverage, where I think it was, oh God, what's her name? The blonde, that everyone,
don't ask me. I don't watch.
Damn. Okay. Anyway, Megyn Kelly. Yeah. Megyn Kelly. Okay. She had a whole bunch of them, from Bo Bergdahl's platoon, and they're all, he was an asshole and this and that, and we lost all these people, and that was more or less kind of bogus. I mean, no one, even the Pentagon sort of confirmed no one really died going after Bo Bergdahl. He was an idiot, but nobody was killed as a result. And we find out that Brett O'Keefe is sort of putting these guys up to it. And
heavily edits the footage that they have of this shootout that takes place. Basically, the president has, her son is dead. He died 10 years earlier in Iraq or something. And it was always thought he died in the line of duty, being a soldier. They edit this video to make it look like he's running away from the fight, when if you watch the full video, it's evident he was actually running towards an injured comrade and trying to help him. And that's how he actually ended up dying, being shot. And it's like, that's about as heroic as it gets, really, isn't it? He died helping someone. I mean.
Yeah, right.
And they completely, destroy that, throw that out. No, we want him to be a coward because we want to make the president look weak and cowardly. And so they make this horrendous, first he does this broadcast with members of the military unit where they basically saying, he ran away from battle. He's a coward. Heroes don't do that kind of thing. And then this turns into a viral video that they're kind of half making viral. It kind of does go viral, but it only goes viral because they've got a bunch of fake social media accounts sharing it and pumping it and encouraging people to watch it. And it turns out that, there's this entire floor, a kind of concrete basement, 6 floors down underneath this big corporate building where they're running. They've got a team of maybe 100 people on computers running thousands, tens of thousands of fake online accounts. LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube,
4chan.
Facebook. Everything. So that they can manipulate the online dialogue. And so Max, our beloved Max, who's been with us since season 1.
Yeah, that's right.
He's come back, and he's actually infiltrated this organization. He's the one actually doing some real spying while Carrie's off doing whatever. Carrie this season isn't doing an awful lot. She's not an important character in this mess at all, really. Basically,
Max
Max
really goes, he's going, balls to the wall with this one.
Yeah. So he's infiltrated this. He's even realized that Dar Adal is running this, and even to his credit, we see he's actually got some video of O'Keefe talking to Dar Adal, and thus tying them together and tying Dar Adal to this whole operation, and he's got it out. And we're not going to get into the whole storyline, but basically Saul has now seen it, and presumably Carrie's going to see it pretty quickly, and they're going to realize what's going on here. And that's some really bold new territory for Homeland. Actually, for spy series in general.
Well, for people that may be a little confused, this is this building, this organization that's running all these sock puppets. This is the same sort of private intelligence firm that we've learned about at the very beginning of the season. The FBI agent who's sort of working with Carrie, he goes there to try and figure out what's going on. This is where the assassins who blew up Sekou Baz van, they work there. And it ostensibly seems to be a legitimate private organization. And they've got job listings on websites, and they recruit people. But it apparently Brett O'Keefe, aka Alex Jones, is actually the one running it for Dar Adal. And as you said, this is very new territory for I can't think of any kind of spy film or TV show that gets into that. And when I was watching this and you see the O'Keefe character there, to me that was just like, Alex Jones does in fact work for the CIA, or more importantly, Alex Jones works for the infamous Deep State, because that's not really the CIA, No, this organization, that is the definition of the Deep State. This quasi-private government contractor that employs
ex-government workers,
and assassins, hackers, right? That's the Deep State, and that was. What do you make of that alone, Tom? That's a bold statement. And
surprisingly on point, given all the relentless news coverage we've had about the term deep state in the last month and a half, 2 months, however long it's been. And indeed the whole argument that is now going on about whether this term actually really means anything. And it is a term that has always been quite loosely defined. It does suffer because of that, and it does mean that people will, we would say, misapply it, but how can you really accuse someone of misusing a word when there is no straightforward definition of that term anyway? But the whole notion of, they've always hinted that Dar Adal represents something more than just a CIA operations guy, that he has political connections, that he has some kind of, outside government connection, that he belongs to a world that is more than just the agency, I guess, is the point. And you know how it is. People quite often say, the CIA is the deep state. And no, people within the CIA belong to the deep state network, if you like, belong to that social class. The CIA itself is kind of, lots of different people doing lots of different things. So to just lump them in with that would be stupid. And of course, because Homeland is not stupid, because Homeland is actually one of the most intelligent spy shows ever made, they've done it very well. They always hinted at it with Dar Adal. In this season, they basically said, this is what he is. He represents some kind of go-between between the smoky private clubs of Georgetown, the private intelligence world, the CIA, the Black Ops assassination paramilitary world. He's at the intersection of all of this. And now, even more than that, he's at the intersection of information warfare. So there's lots of different ways you could take this. One of the things that did come up for me is this whole story that we got, I can't actually remember how long ago it was, since the turn of the new year at least, In fact, I think it must have been after Trump was inaugurated, so it must be the last couple of months. The story about Cambridge Analytica, this supposed big data firm, who people are now accusing of having rigged the Brexit vote, of having got Trump elected, all sorts. Now, I have no doubt that using big data in the way that they're describing would be helpful to a political campaign. The idea that because it's this new tool that no one's ever used before and it's therefore completely unchallenged by any other factor and is thus the reason why these things happened and why people voted the way they did, I think that's an idiotic simplification, quite honestly.
Sure.
I think to isolate one factor behind why did people vote for Brexit and why did people elect Trump, the moment you isolate one factor is the moment you've given up on having a sensible discussion, really. But nonetheless, the notion of profiling people via their online presences, via their social media profiles and so on, and not just doing this demographically, but doing this psychographically. So you're looking for psychological traits within these people, and thus using that as a means of targeting them with micro-marketing, where you make a video that's only going to be seen by 20,000 people, so it's designed for those specific 20,000 people. And these are tools that weren't available to political campaigners and marketers and so on even 5 years ago. So it is sinister. It is something that I think we should take seriously. I just think the news coverage that's kind of isolated this and said, oh, wow, this is how Trump won. No, this isn't how Trump won. There's like 100 different reasons why Trump won when you break it down. So that's what it reminded me of. And I thought, yet again, this is something appears in the news, then it's on Homeland, or sometimes it's the other way around. But nonetheless, every season of Homeland has consistently chimed with news stories that happened while the season was playing out, while it was actually being broadcast. So unless the producers of Homeland got wind of this use of mass data, big data marketing for political purposes, like months before the press did, which is possible, certainly possible, were they encouraged to include this storyline? Because this is where the whole season's been going, right? Not just this season, but last as well. Last season, the terrorists were just a kind of, they were just cannon fodder. They were a cannon fodder for the narrative, as they were in this season. It's not really what the whole thing is revolving around anymore. It's now revolving around the world of the intersection between politics and the internet. So last season we had the whole kind of Aaron Schwartz character, kind of Edward Snowden storyline-ish. And that all chimed with John Brennan getting his email, or one of his email accounts hacked, and so on and so forth. But that's where the action was taking place last season, primarily, was in the internet world, in the world of secrets and using information as a weapon, as a tool of power. This season, it's become even more explicit. He's actually, there is actually a great moment in the most recent episode where O'Keefe says it's time to weaponize some information.
Yeah.
They've been talking about I.O., information operations, which is what the military call this kind of thing, where you have fake sock puppet accounts in order to manipulate public dialogue and shut down dissent and encourage people to, view things a certain way, or at least discuss things in certain terms that therefore mean the conversation can never go anywhere. So all of this is fascinating to watch from an entertainment point of view, simply because I cannot remember any film or spy series ever discussing this before, but also sinister in the same way that Cambridge Analytica are sinister, because it's it's like a new magic or something. Yeah. That's how people, or at least that's how people feel about it. And I don't think we should react in that way. I think ultimately what they're doing is pretty simplistic and straightforward, as it's portrayed in the show. You basically got a bunch of people sat there, typing, fuck him.
Yeah, exactly.
over and over again on YouTube, using 100 different accounts. And that's what they spent their day doing. But the thing is, that does make a difference. It does. It does. I mean, you're still on YouTube. You know that one of the problems is the quality of comments is crap because the quality of comments is crap. That if someone actually posts something intelligent, you can occasionally actually see some good discussion on there. But for the most part, it's just people slagging each other off and using stereotypes and all the rest of it. So weaponizing that, as much as it might seem like a really dark, evil, mystical thing, is actually really quite straightforward and probably does take place in the exact way that it's being portrayed on Homeland. So I think this is where I've been going with this season, is trying to figure out, well, okay, what does this mean about our reactions to this in the real world? Because this is something we should be concerned with, but we should neither overhype it so it becomes, the thing that's now ruling the world, but nor should we just fear it as some kind of black magic from beyond. It's actually the same kind of techniques that have been used in propaganda for decades, just as applied to the internet. That when you have a public discussion space like that, you want to make it kind of as dumb and emotional as possible. That is, at heart, what they're trying to do here. So, I mean, I know there are specific aims. They're trying to make the president look bad because she's a peacenik or whatever. But the way in which they're doing that is dumb and simplistic. And therefore, that's not something we have to be too worried about. That's not something where we have to think this is something we have no way of countering. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That there's no reason to get carried away with this. We just have to be aware that it's going on and try and not get caught up in these dumbass online conversations, I guess, is the answer to it. Because we can't stop them.
And getting into arguments with people that may or may not even exist.
Yeah.
And I know that that argument can kind of go crazy. Everyone's a sock puppet. But a lot of when they're naming when Max is going through some of the sock puppet accounts, I mean, they're like stupid ass names. I forget. Right. Yeah, exactly. And they're making these sort of like silly, fake, conservative, gun-toting, militaristic accounts, and they're pretty dumb. And O'Keefe says, get the talking points out. We all got to kind of say the same general things. And what it kind of reminded me of is, especially when you were talking there, that these aren't new tactics. I mean, this is kind of the same as paying a bunch of people to go, to a protest and say a particular thing, or to go to a protest group, a meeting, and say certain things and push people into a certain direction. I mean, they're just doing this on the internet, and it's a lot easier when you can have one guy, but he creates 1,000 fake people, and they're all kind of saying more or less the same thing. It's the same basic concept. It's just, as you said, it's more technologically savvy.
It's just like when you had one of those periods of history I'm obsessed with, the late 19th century anarchists in Western Europe, who were completely infiltrated by, special branch in this country and the local intelligence in other countries. And one of the kind of identifying features of the agent provocateur was that he'd just be the guy who stood at the back of the room, and every 10 minutes or something he'd go, "Let's bomb the police."
Right, yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, so every time the conversation might be getting somewhere productive, it's like, no, gotta drag it back to this stupid, one-line slogan. So it's essentially just the same as that, but in a slightly more technologically sophisticated way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but here's my question to you. Or this is more of an observation right now, but we're again posed with a season of Homeland that is not necessarily predicting events, but they're able to capture things. I mean, Max at one point says fake news. Mm-hmm. That term wasn't in the lexicon until very recently. And Homeland was written well before that term became this sort of popular slogan to use. And so we get that. We get this whole concept that there is some sort of as you said, some tech firm that exists out there that is able to manipulate news and all these things. And again, of course, I think the original sort of catalyst for fake news, or the original exploiters of this as an idea, were the intelligence agencies. And now, of course, it's become adopted by Donald Trump and his acolytes out there. Which is, I assume that was probably always the intended result, or at least it's worked out for the CIA either way. It doesn't matter.
Well, it has worked out for them either way. I don't know. I see it more as like, once you've kind of you can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
But once you've made the notion of fake news part of the public dialogue, then everyone is going to immediately, or I suppose at some delay, but not, it didn't take that long, before everyone now has just weaponized this term as a thing to chuck at news that they don't want to believe. Yeah. And again, you have that, that wonderful line in this, latest episode where the president's kind of losing her mind over this video portraying her son as a coward. And she's going, it's a lie, it's a lie. And her chief of staff or whoever he is says, yeah, but it's a lie that half of the country want to believe.
Yeah, no, that is a great moment.
This is Rorschach politics. This is the whole world in which we live, where because people for so long have just chosen the news that they want to listen to, it's now got to the point, and this has been exacerbated by social media because it means you can unfollow anyone who says things or posts things that you don't want to hear. So you can go on social media and just get 3 hours of stuff that you agree with. What does that do to people? It shuts down their critical faculties and their ability to deal with perspectives other than their own, for one thing. It kind of isolates them into these little political pockets where they only discuss things with other people who think the same way. But it also has the effect of meaning that when something like this fake news thing comes along as a meme, as a term, as a popular idea, it means everyone adopts it. And everyone just uses it as another means of not having to deal with the stuff that they don't want to believe. And in a democracy, or at least in an elective political system, whether you want to call it a democracy or not, that is kind of a game changer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is that now you have a point where the whole idea of actually raising a democratic consensus is impossible. And hence why one of the reasons why Trump won is not by appealing to racists, but by managing to appeal to racists and militarists and people concerned about immigration for other reasons than race, and people who are economic nationalists, and people who are just sort of generally pissed off, and people who hate Hillary Clinton, and people who hate neoliberalism, and people who are kind of isolationists. And, how does he manage to appeal to
libertarians, anti-neocons?
The militarists how did he manage to appeal to sort of the neocons and the anti-neocons at the same time? Yeah. But he managed it. And that's kind of what was new about Trump, was someone who didn't have anything like a cohesive message that you could actually build a consensus around. So this is like post-democratic elections. This is what it's going to be like from now on. You can't go into the next election thinking we need to have 5, clear policies and that's going to appeal to all of these people because they all agree on this. You have to be a bit more sophisticated than that. You just have to be. Otherwise, I think you're going to face electoral oblivion, no matter who you are. Because now you have not only a political spectrum, but a political spectrum composed of 20 isolated little bubbles that don't interact with other bubbles on the political spectrum. So what the hell do you do about that? It makes politics very different when, all of these people are voting. So, yeah, they've hit the nail on the head in terms of where we're at as a society.
Yeah,
you've got to give them credit.
And which again is fascinating but so unnerving that they were writing this months ago. They didn't film this until months ago. They might have written this a year ago for all we know. Yet all of these ideas. Tom, what do you think of just the fact that this is? This has got to be the season where the CIA really, there's almost nothing good about them. There is no, Kerry isn't in the CIA anymore and has been very adamant about, putting that idea forward. So I don't even really think Kerry represents the CIA. Saul is basically about to go completely off the grid. I love the scene where he gets his bug out bag. I thought that was amazing.
In the latest
I would
episode,
love.
I think it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to, if I had to have a crazy bug out bag, I would definitely want it to be in like the Diamond District with all that crazy stuff. But he's not really in the CIA anymore. And interestingly, there's a line where Max is describing what's going on to Carrie, and this is when he says fake news, and I think he says he's not sure exactly who's behind this. He says it could be the DOD, NSA, or Dar Adal. He doesn't even say CIA. And the CIA
aren't really in the show anymore.
No, I guess not. Maybe, yeah.
That's the thing. The show has kind of moved on. Last season, okay, we had the CIA. It was all based in the CIA station in Berlin and the infiltration by the Russians.
Yeah.
It was, classic CIA spy story. But this season, there hasn't actually really been anyone from the CIA. And we're still not even sure what Dar Adal, who he represents, and why the president has to take him so seriously. I mean, we know why. It's because he's the major political representative of the deep state. But it's not because he holds some position in the CIA, because neither of us are even sure if he's still in the CIA or what position he holds, because the dialogue has never made that clear.
No.
In fact, is he not representing, what was it he said? Not that he had did he say that he had a constituency too?
Yes,
is that the term he used?
Yeah.
And he's basically
who voted for you? And he says nobody, but I have a constituency as well.
Yeah, and his constituency is, what did he call it? The National Security Establishment.
Right.
So not even just the CIA, but we're talking that whole intersection.
Military, NSA, FBI, yeah, everybody.
Well, yeah.
Private intelligence.
Military, industrial intelligence, all of that, all kind of rolled into one. That, it seems, is who Dar Adal now represents. So I can see the CIA. I mean, we're not 100% sure that the CIA were involved in this season. We're just extrapolating from the fact that they've been involved in this since day one, and we can't see a good reason for them to back out now. But they aren't really represented in this season at all. So
no, I mean that's what's so unsettling, is that who's really the bad guy in this is, for lack of a better term, the deep state. And that seems to be all anybody wants to fucking talk about nowadays, is the threat of this story. And it's so funny too that they've crafted the president-elect so well. I think she's a great actress. I give her that. I think she's very, very good. She's very believable. And she's just Elizabeth Marvel is her name. She's very, very good. But she really does embody both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And again, this mimics this is the whole damn narrative that the alternative media has put out there, that the deep state is after Donald Trump, that he is secretly about peace and about uncovering the, conspiracies and about, standing up to these people. And Dar Adal is basically the one, fucking with him the whole time. Creating the fake news against him and troll factories and, all of the kind of talking points that the alt media goes after. Which is really, unprecedented in a series that we're almost, we know has had very, a very cooperative relationship with the CIA. And this is what's so fascinating. And again, maybe this is, I don't know if this was given to them, but Dar Adal as an archetype is also almost completely different from any archetype we've seen in a CIA-sponsored TV or movie. Because the scope at which he's operating now is unprecedented, is huge. Because he's basically on the verge of taking over the government and starting World War III with Iran. That's the background to all of this is, that's still kind of lurking. And again, that's going on every day here too. We got to put Iran on notice. There's something's happening. I mean, in this season, we've basically kind of glossed over the fact that Mossad and whatever faction of the CIA have concocted this whole bogus story to convince the president that we need to start bombing Iran. And even Javadi, our good friend, he ends up, aligning himself with Dar Adal in a stupid move because he gets killed or rendered to Israel, which might as well be killed. But I don't know. It's just that's lurking in the background of all of this. This is a totally different animal than anything we've seen in a CIA-sponsored production before. And I think we can assume that the CIA had some input in this because we know that there was the article, where they were meeting with, in Georgetown with all these people. I believe too, what's his name? Is it Morell? The current head of the CIA right now. He met with the producers of Homeland, just after Trump nominated him.
Oh, you're thinking of Mike Pompeo. Yeah, he did meet with the people
Pompeo,
of Homeland, yes. Didn't he?
Yeah.
Which would indicate
a working
You're right. It was within a week of taking over the job. It was what's on the agenda? Well, Iran, terrorism, meeting with the producers of Homeland.
Yes, I bet. I'm sure. Right. That's a meeting you don't want to miss.
We assume so. I'm just saying we don't have Alex Ganser hasn't done an interview in the last 3 months talking about CIA involved in this season, but we can only assume that they still are. So what would be in it for them? Or what would be in it for them and the other people? I mean, we know they also apparently meet with, State Department, White House, all the rest of it. What would be in it for them to have a series kind of lay out the mechanisms by which politics and electioneering are now being done? Or possibly, it was just inevitable.
Yeah.
And so you kind of, try and get ahead of the curve, maybe? Because that's the thing. This has been building for a while. I mean, people are saying, it's astonishing what's happened since Trump got elected. And it kind of is a bit of astonishing. I'm not saying that's untrue. But
come on,
all of these things had been kind of bubbling for a while, that a bunch of this stuff was just going to kind of start leaking out, and the whole way in which politics really happens has slowly but surely been becoming more explicit. The role of intelligence agencies, the roles of big private businesses and their intersections with government in various ways. The notion of a deep state, awareness of that term and awareness of at least the kind of vague definition and what it represents has been growing for a long time. It's just now was the moment when it fell out into the public dialogue. The fact that it's happening at the same time that Homeland is basically portraying it, it is a bit unnerving. It does make you wonder, who have they been talking to and what motives do those people have for recognizing that the dialogue was about to turn this way and therefore thinking we've got to weave this into a TV show. But for what purpose? Because again, it's not like the deep state is coming across well.
No.
But maybe that's the idea, is just to turn the whole notion of the deep state into a kind of cartoonish, it's Dar Adal and some guy who drinks Diet Pepsi like he's going out of fashion. To turn it into something as simplistic as that and make it kind of de-weaponize the term deep state. Is that what they're aiming to do, maybe?
Perhaps. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I almost saw this as not necessarily de-weaponizing, but just sort of it exists, sort of like the Snowden, more and more I view Snowden and that whole thing was just, okay, we have to now confirm that this is going on, and we need a vessel to convince, or at least to confirm to everybody out there that this is going on. Let's use him. Maybe that's sort of that's my feeling with this, because, I mean, if anything, I don't think this makes, it doesn't make the deep state look ineffectual. I mean, it makes them look terrifying. And it makes them look omnipotent. And you really don't fuck with them. Cause, and I think that in a way this is very, this is in a very cinematic nature, because it would never get this far. You would never have a president at this point. The preview for the next episode, it looks like they're gonna assassinate her.
Yeah, maybe.
Or something like that. I mean, there's gotta be some tremendously big climax. And it can't end well. Or, I mean, I'm sure it will resolve itself, but it'll get very close to ending very badly. So I don't know. Maybe this is more just like it exists, it's out there, but I don't know. Maybe the CIA will become somehow the heroes at the end. Or maybe carry and the president-elect will prevail, and they will root out the problems of the agency, and Dar Adal will be arrested, and everything is cool. Deep state is over. Maybe that's maybe that might be an end goal. The defeat. Well,
that's where if that's where the season ends up, I can kind of see what's in it for them. I really can. Yeah. If that, you're right. If that's the narrative they're going for, which it might be, I can see that working for them. The problem is they only have 2 episodes left, and right at this point in time, it's, as a piece of propaganda, it's not very easy to see what we're being propagandized with. But great piece of television. Can't argue with that. You were saying before, you think this may even be your favorite season of Homeland. It's certainly up there. It's certainly up there with the heights of season 1 and season 4, which I think were the best so far. Better than the last one by a mile. Yeah. It's moving very fast. Like I said, very, very little filler, very little, just dwelling on Carrie and her endless bloody emotional battle with everything. They've actually just packed it full of storyline, which is great. But yeah, like I say, it's a piece of propaganda, very hard to put my finger on. And I have a feeling, even after we watch these next couple of episodes, we're still not going to be quite sure what they were going for. So,
I also wonder too if this is something Hugo Turner brought up to me in an email. He's been following it, since we've been talking about it, and he was saying he was struck by how much they really are appealing to conspiracy culture. And that's something that has been from early on, where they've mentioned 9/11 and conspiracy theories. Now, they've got Alex Jones in the show. They've got, the deep state, all these things. I don't know, maybe this is also like much more a message for us. Maybe they've been listening to our podcast and they know that we're aware that they've been reaching out to, or at least been appealing to certain.
You just love the idea that Alex Ganser listens to what we do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying,
Well, I don't know. We had the Homeland hackers on, so maybe they are paying attention.
Well, maybe they are. It's certainly not unrealistic to think that they would be monitoring, web media coverage of Homeland, and we've been pretty prominent in terms of that. We've done it consistently for a number of years now, so maybe. You cast your mind back to that mini season of the X-Files they did last year. That was completely, who was watching that apart from conspiracy theorists?
Yeah, right.
Because that was all it was aimed at. Every single episode had an awful lot of conspiracy bait in there. And obviously Homeland is a more sophisticated and intelligent show, but there again, there's a lot of conspiracy bait in there. Everything that a conspiracy theorist could really ask for. And now they've expanded beyond the CIA to encompass the whole notion of the deep state, as that's, the grand conspiracy that we're looking at. So there is also an element of, conspiracy as spectacle here, which again makes a kind of cartoon of the whole notion. And that I can certainly see as a valuable propaganda aim for them. And if that, in a sort of general sense, that's what they're going for, they've probably accomplished it, because I keep saying it's been a great piece of entertainment so far. It is a great spectacle. So, yeah, kudos to them on that, I guess.
Quickly, what do you think of the fact that the Alex Jones or Brett O'Keefe character is, he's like on his TV show doing all these things, but then, he's moonlighting at the CIA front company. Is no one going to notice? Like, you know what I mean? I assume they're signing non-disclosure agreements, but that was maybe a little bit of sort of sloppy spycraft that he'd be in the damn building. But, now here we are at the break. Quick commercial break with more.
I like very much
Radio. You're an American institution. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys because they have all the technology. They have all these great things that they're going to do. But obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Did you know there are 3 million edible food plants on Earth, and none have the nutritional value of the hemp plant? HempUSA.org offers you hemp protein powder. It does not contain chemicals or THC, is non-GMO, and is 100% gluten-free. Hemp protein powder burns fat, builds muscle, contains 53% protein, and feeds the body the nutrients it needs. Call 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org. HempUSA.org introduces 3 brand new detox formulations of micro plant powder. Brain Fuel for depression, bipolar disorders, and stress. Total Care, anti-cancer agent that cleans the liver and organs and increases memory. Rejuvenate, invigorates and heals the body, mind, and spirit. These products are your alternative to pharmaceuticals. Call 888-910-4367 and like us on Facebook. We ship worldwide. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
Yo, what's up? Check this out.
The voice of the revolution. American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
What about show business? Show business, completely dishonest, corrupt, and full of shit, but in a nice way. Plenty of expensive drugs and perverted sex. If you're going to be full of shit, might as well enjoy your work. Then you have the media. Not just the news media, let's include them all. The media are almost literally exploding with bullshit because they're located right at the crossroads of all the other bullshit. The media are made up of equal parts advertising, politics, business, public relations, and show business. These people are sitting right at bullshit junction. There's enough bullshit in the media for Texas to open a branch office. And you still have enough left over to start 2 law firms and a Christian bookstore.
What has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Provide us for free education?
Well, that's obviously effective, but apart from reversing the dumbing down of America...
All the information they provide is free?
What about the free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, man?
Exploiting commonplace corruption?
They help vulnerable people who don't have a voice?
Bringing light to important information nobody else does.
Or they never censor, hang up, or cut off their guests? Well, that's no fun, is it?
Oh, they created a fantastic alternative media source during an era of bad, manipulative, and infiltrated mainstream and alternative media shows and scum.
Okay, well, apart from the free education, free information, free podium for broadcast activists to speak from, exposing commonplace corruption, helping vulnerable people without a voice, bringing light to important information nobody else does, and creating a fantastic commercial-free alternative media source in a sea of bad, manipulative mainstream and alternative media shills and scum, what has American Freedom Radio ever done for us?
Donate to American Freedom Radio today.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio. Porkins. Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. If you're just joining us right now, we are still joined by good friend and frequent guest Tom Secker. In the first hour, Tom and I were discussing the latest few episodes of Homeland Season 6, or more importantly, the latest sort of revelations or plot lines that have been going on in Homeland. And Tom has been kind enough to join us for a little bit of the second hour. And, Tom, feel free if I am going too long, if you want to just, leave, that's totally fine. Sure. But, Tom, we were getting into some interesting territory in the first hour, and I really wanted to kind of explore another idea with you. And this is, again, going back to this Brett O'Keefe, a.k.a. Alex Jones character, who apparently is, not only is he an asshole and sort of a manipulator of the truth, but he's also working for the CIA / deep state / whatever Dar Adal is up to. And my question to you is this the deep state CIA, whatever you want to call it, let's say CIA, I think. Is this the CIA telling us, yeah, of course he works for us, and has been for some time? Because this is so blatant and in your face. I mean, they could have easily just had him be this nasty character, and they could have very easily written in a storyline where he's got sock puppet accounts, or some, some sort of nefarious group of hackers that he hires to create sock puppet accounts. I mean, they could have had the damn Russians, They reference in this, Matt's reference is the notion of troll factories. And he even says, well, I know that the Russians and the Chinese do this, but I've never, I never knew that they existed here on this scale. And the primary function of this troll factory is just to prop up O'Keefe's agenda and motives and operations. So my question is, and obviously, we're going to be speculating here, but do you think this is them saying, yes, he works for us? And what do you think Alex Jones's reaction would be?
Alex Jones is obviously going to have to be in a very awkward position here, because it's flattery on a massive scale.
Yes.
But which will appeal to Alex Jones, because he is an egotist, that much is certain. But at the same time, they are saying he kind of works for us. But at the same time, Alex Jones now kind of does work for the president. He doesn't really work for the deep state, or not officially anyway. But in the last year, he has almost totally rebranded himself and rebooted InfoWars into a pro-government, almost neocon media outlet. Not quite so explicitly as Breitbart has been for a while, but, they're getting there. So would he have that much of a problem with it? I mean, given what Alex Jones now purports to believe is that, government is good and the president's good and, we're going to make the country right in this way, and centralized power and military authority needs to be respected and so on and so forth. Is any of this really fundamentally at contrast and contradiction with that? I don't think it is. So I wouldn't imagine he has a huge amount of a problem with it, even though it does kind of make him look like a two-faced asshole. Is this them saying that? I have no idea. I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because just as I wouldn't put it past them to not create, but, latch on to a rising alternative media figure and turn him into their own sock puppet, if you like. It wouldn't surprise me if that was true. Because And this gets into an idea that I've explored in a few episodes. Conspiracy theories themselves aren't really a threat. Because, to be honest, politics has always had conspiracy theories. There's always been a number of people who believe, they're up to something, is essentially the mentality. And this is especially true with intelligence services and especially true with shadowy secret meetings in private clubs in Georgetown. So that's just kind of like a cost of doing business. If you're going to conspire, sooner or later you're going to be the subject of conspiracy theories. You just accept that. You just live with it. So we've seen in this series, just in this season, but in this series in general over the last 5-6 seasons, it's incorporated this stuff. As we were saying before the break, there's a lot of conspiracy bait in there. And I think that's because, like I say, it's not really a threat in itself. If you can take that and, try and prove it in court or something, then it becomes a threat. Then it becomes a problem they actually have to deal with. But just as part of the public dialogue, it isn't. And so the notion that the CIA would promote Alex Jones or co-opt him in some way is certainly not beyond the realm of possibility at all. Maybe there's a different way of reading it, though. That it's not like them admitting that. It's them dangling that out there and encouraging people to think like that at a time when Alex Jones is kind of destroying whatever radicalism he really had. Which again just sort of fudges it all and means that everyone can kind of believe whatever they want, and the dialogue doesn't go anywhere constructive. The dialogue about what is the alternative media supposed to be? What's its function anymore? Because when arguably the biggest figure in it is supporting the current sitting president, it's not really a threat to the establishment, is it? Not really a problem for them if that's what's going on, if that's how we're talking about these things. And so if people want to believe, it's all just the CIA anyway, well, there again, does that really cause any problem for them? I don't think so. So, yeah, I can see that being a useful propaganda tool. Am I making any sense here?
Yeah, no, what you're saying there also kind of reminds me of what you were saying in the first hour when you were talking about the concept of the meme slogan of fake news and how it's basically used by both sides. Everyone ultimately the CIA, of course, is benefiting from this because all sides are using this, and it's almost like with the Brett O'Keefe / Alex Jones character. It's kind of like for the sort of pseudo intellectual liberals that watch Homeland and think that there's it's some cutting edge show. Or Hollywood liberals that watch it, they're reinforced with the notion that, of course, Jones is just some, horrible stooge that's being, controlled by these shadowy, you could easily just say, well, Dar Adal is just a stand-in for the Russians. You know what I mean? And for all we know, who really fucking knows with him, right? I mean, who knows what his allegiances are or whatnot? I mean, he obviously has no problem making deals with radical jihadis. I mean, are the Russians all that different? Probably not. So, you can kind of see that on one level. And then on another level, I think you could even be the kind of Alex Jones type supporter or people of that ilk and still see this as, but we got to go after the Iranians. Really all that O'Keefe is doing in this season is, he's just going after this, wimpy president who doesn't want to take on the evil Muslims, which are really the real threat, and we've seen that kind of across the board. I mean, Tom, we were just talking about this in our subscriber podcast. So we did a joint one together, and we were talking about that. But it's like the CIA as the sort of puppet master of Al Qaeda. That idea is gone. Now it really is the Muslims are coming, and they are a threat to white Western supremacy and white democracy or whatever the fuck term they want to use, and they need to be stopped. And that's really all the Brett O'Keefe character is doing in this.
So it leaves open the possibility for several different interpretations. This revelation that O'Keefe is working with Dar Adal, And yeah, it really does depend on sort of where you're coming from on the political spectrum, but also on the media spectrum. You could see several different things that would reinforce your existing beliefs if you wanted to. And so, yeah, I think you're right. For the kind of hardcore, not necessarily Alex Jones listeners, but people of that political persuasion, certainly Trump supporters, they'd see this, this is a good thing. We want Alex Jones to be teaming up with the government to, quash this damn liberal peacenik president who, who's just going to destroy America and isn't going to stand up for our rights and what we need and what we want. You can totally see it playing into them from that point of view. And like you say, for the liberals, it sort of kind of makes Alex Jones look like some hack, really.
Yeah, exactly.
So it completely flatters their perception of the world and their desired worldview. Yeah, it certainly leaves room for both of those interpretations and probably a bunch of others that we're not, articulating right this second. But
yeah,
across the spectrum, you divide up the political media spectrum however you want. You could probably find people within each little bubble interpreting this differently, but interpreting it in a way that conveniently supports their desired bubble view of the world. So
well,
it's very well crafted.
That's and you know what I was going to say too. Beyond just that, it's like propaganda for everybody. Everybody can be kind of propagandized, but which is like I mean, hats off to the CIA for that. I mean, again, they're doing something that's just so above and beyond anybody else out there, where they can have this show like Homeland, and you can get virtually everybody can take something out of this and say, this is really what the show is trying to tell you. This is really a tool for us because they're exposing this, that, and the other thing. But another thing too, I think is, that funny with the Brett O'Keefe character in this is that, when you see him at the, this private intelligence organization, I love the way they've done that, where he's not this asshole that he is on television. He's much more reserved. So again, they're playing up this whole, he's an actor, really. This is all an act, which is, and Alex Jones is an amazing actor. No one can take that away from him. But his mannerisms are different. He dresses different. He doesn't have the kind of like typical Alex Jones attire on. He's got these like nice, expensive, they look like Brooks Brothers sweaters, and he dresses kind of like a Silicon Valley nerd, like a tech CEO would. And also he's drinking Diet Coke every 5 seconds, which I saw that as like a real dig at Alex Jones, as that, we get, all natural foods and no GMOs and, water filtration units, all that shit. And it's like, yeah, and you're probably guzzling Diet Coke every time that, the TV isn't on you. Like that seemed like a wonderful little, send up of him. And
a send up, I think, of the theatricality of all these sorts of people, regardless of whether they're mainstream or alt media or whatever, is that they are playing a role to appeal to a certain audience, and they know that audience well, and they know how to appeal to them, but that isn't the person that they really are. And you're right. It is funny seeing O'Keefe being this more kind of urbane sophisticate when his TV show is just him sort of going, it's all them, and you got to hate the president, and it's all this guttural, simplistic trash. But he's obviously quite an intelligent, careful, strategic man. And also, I think, it tells you, even behind the most simplistic of media appeal, which is usually just an emotional appeal, there is sophistication, there is intelligence, there is strategy, there is people thinking we know how to tweak the right sort of reaction out of the people we're aiming this at.
Yeah.
And that's a useful lesson for people. That's a useful, actually quite a good thing for the show to have done in a way. Whether that will fall on deaf ears, probably, but at least give them some, I suppose we could say that's one positive thing that they're doing, is showing you enough of a glimpse behind the curtain that you might actually realize something. Maybe.
No, again, I think this season in particular is very instructive towards the reality of these kind of situations. where you are getting like a not only a peek behind, but you're really seeing the like how they're able to fool, again, like you're saying that the O'Keefe character, comes across like that, but in reality, no, he's this smart person. He seems like a person who was trained in this, that he wasn't always going to be a alternative newscaster. Really, but there's like, I don't know if you saw like in the trailer for the next episode, there's a moment where Dar Adal is interrogating Max and O'Keefe is there and he starts, he uses some pressure point in Max's neck and it looks really painful. And the expression on O'Keefe's face is like complete and utter terror. He doesn't want to be involved in hurting people and torturing things. That's not what he's about. Which again is a very kind of interesting, because of course, Alex Jones was the person he'd beat the shit out of somebody if he had to. And I wouldn't put it past him in reality. But again, it's this wonderful sort of moment of, cause I think, getting away from Jones for a second, I think it's more just the nature of acting and the nature of actors or news anchors as actors. This isn't really how they are, but we project so much on these people like a Rachel Maddow or Sean Hannity or whoever, as these larger than life figures, as movie stars. And we've seen this, Anderson Cooper is a celebrity, and again, the CIA intern, but, that to me was a really interesting, and I'd love to see how O'Keefe kind of progresses, but seeing that he's not who he really is, and that to me is just another one of these sort of wonderful little moments in Homeland where, cause I think that's where Homeland does the best sort of work is not necessarily in these big, larger things. Cause of course, we've got the CIA basically, committing a false flag bombing in New York. Very reminiscent of the World Trade Center. They're not really hiding that at all, okay? But that's sort of that's almost irrelevant to, as you were saying, the sort of intricacies of media manipulation, of the way that we consume information. And it's all done very subtly. And just that one little scene where you see O'Keefe freaking out, that to me was much more instructive and really illustrates the power of Homeland and the way that it can, change one's opinion. I don't know. I'm rambling on, Tom, if you want to jump in or anything.
No, for sure. I know where you're going with this, that in some ways, there's drama in the smallest moments.
Yeah.
The biggest drama is often in the smallest moments rather than the truck bombing or whatever. That was actually dealt with quite delicately in a way. You kind of see Sekou look back and then the truck explodes, but you don't actually see anyone on the streets getting maimed and injured or anything. You just sort of see the smoke rising between the buildings. It's quite even almost European in its style. And yet the really kind of shocking big moments are usually just between 2 or 3 people. Someone says or does something that someone else wasn't expecting, like you're saying about this next episode. But even the big revelations, like even with Quinn and realizing that this truck in the house is, the same truck that they used to blow up New York, it was done in a very small scale, quite straightforward way, where they're not like smacking you across the face with this stuff. It is they are subtle peaks and troughs in the drama. And I do agree with you. I think that the best moments in Homeland are often the smaller ones, because that's where you get a real sense of the complexity and subtlety of the world that they're building within it. And because it is so similar in so many ways to the real world we live in, it is instructive. It is to some extent educative about how these things actually go down and how people actually work. For want of a better way of looking at it, because so often human drama isn't about how people really work, and that's kind of how they manage to manufacture the drama. Whereas in Homeland, it's the moments where it's most realistic that are perhaps most memorable and have the most impact on the audience. And that, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, and I suppose there's an argument to be made either way, they certainly do it very well. There's certainly some skillful people writing and producing this. Skillful at what? Well, like I say, there's an argument to be made kind of either way as to whether the existence of Homeland is a good thing or a bad thing. Certainly, it's a good thing because we've had so much fun talking about it.
Yeah, well, definitely, and it's been a real lifesaver, especially for me, in terms of, getting episodes together. Full disclosure, I had no episode prepared until yesterday when Tom agreed to come on to talk about Homeland. So it's been great in that sense, and it's been great too, I think, as it's been great in that for the most part, it's an entertaining show. It's well done. It's not like you're not watching. There's so much sort of state-sponsored schlock out there that's interesting in that
it's a good term, state-sponsored schlock. I don't think we've ever used that. I think you've just coined a really good term.
But you know what I mean? Like there's, we were arguing about this not arguing, we were sort of, commiserating about this the other day, but we constantly get people you gotta watch this and watch that and this one and that one. And really, it's all kind of the same thing. Just because the Pentagon was involved in it doesn't mean you need Tom and I to talk about it for an hour and a half. But with Homeland, there really is, again, there's a lot more to it. And it's also just so well done. People forget how good F. Murray Abraham is. He's a phenomenal actor. Mandy Patinkin, even Claire Danes,
they're all very good actors.
Yeah.
It's one thing they have actually done consistently is cast the show really well. I mean, we've said it before, they carried on with Brody at least a season longer than they should have. But great character, great actor, Yes. They got an awful lot out of that actor in terms of making that part work. And not an easy part to play either. So, hats off to them, to both them for casting him and him for his performance. This is, and we've said it before, I'll say it again, there's more interesting stuff going on in longer form drama TV than there ever is in cinema these days. Even the very, very best cinema, and we recently discussed Nightcrawler. That was a very popular episode, actually, and I can understand why. Great film, and we had a lot of fun discussing it. But there isn't as much in that as there is in this, and it isn't as wonderful as I think Nightcrawler is. It's not as good as the very, very best TV drama, because you can just do so much more when you have 10, 12 hours to work with. If you've got enough material to fill it with, and we have had this problem with the last couple of seasons of Homeland, where there's at least sort of 2-3 episodes in the middle of it where we're just like, oh, get on with it, something needs to happen now. Not really felt that with this one. This one, they really have jammed it all in there, so we're going to have plenty to talk about again in a couple of weeks' time, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tom, I know I kept you longer
it's okay.
But quickly, do you want to just tell people a little bit about your 2 articles in the American Journal of Economics and Sociology? This is, of course, the issue that I am in, and Aaron Franz, Tarzi, Matt Alford, Jay Dyer is in it, a whole host of people. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit, because you've got 2 articles in it, just about your articles?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of them I wrote myself, the other one I co-wrote with Matt. The one I wrote myself is essentially an examination of how the Soviet-Afghan war has been portrayed in fiction. And it turns out virtually all of the major movies, in fact, and most of the other fiction that's actually dealt with that war, has been in some way state-sponsored. Not always by Western governments, but if we include Britain, America, Israel, Russia, and China, all of whom had quite a big stake in that war, they've all been involved in some way in portraying this through fiction. But yet, despite that, the politics in a lot of these films, in most of them at least, are identical, regardless of whether it was the Russians that assisted it or the Americans, which is not what I expected when I started actually watching through all of these and trying to figure this out. There's some unusual, like the most, if you like, complex and intelligent of the lot was a tank-based film called Beast of War, I think it's called. That is by far the most interesting film I've ever seen about the Soviet-Afghan war. And yet that one was they bought those tanks from the Israeli military, and most of the film is shot in Israel. So you wouldn't have thought there would be room for, example, a sophisticated portrait of the Mujahideen, and a sensitive and intelligent portrait of the Mujahideen. Yet that is pretty much the only film out of the whole bunch that portrays the Mujahideen as anything other than a bunch of screaming, bearded Arabs with guns. So propaganda is not always what you think it's going to be, and that's what I found out when I sort of committed to studying that, and that's what I put into the paper. So if you want to sort of read more about how the CIA rewrote Charlie Wilson's War, for example, there's a lot of details of that in there. The other piece, we tried to answer kind of one of the big questions. Why are the CIA and DOD in Hollywood? What do they get out of it? And they state their reasons, mostly on their websites and in their directives, internal instructions and so on. It's mostly just about recruitment and about trying to ensure an accurate portrayal of their people. And if indeed that is all they were doing, it would be relatively banal and trivial. But we explored several examples, quite concrete examples, where this wasn't the case. Let's pick the DOD, just because I want to keep this quick, because I'm getting a little tired. They say, yeah, we're openly trying to recruit people and retain people, keep them in the military, but we're also about technical accuracy. We want these things to be portrayed right. But yet the most prominent movies that the DOD has been involved with since the turn of the century, pretty much all of them involve alien invasion in some way. So you have the Avengers, Transformers, Battleship, War of the Worlds, all of these. And when you read some of their documents, we found things like, on War of the Worlds, they were on set throughout quite a lot of the filming, to be honest. And one of the things that the discussions they were involved with was how dirty the troops should look. Because you have all these troops with all their vehicles fighting against the invading aliens. And the comment they made was that they wanted them to look not very battle dirty, i.e. akin to Iraq. So what? The aliens represent Iraqis? Is that where they're going with this? But that's completely implausible. I mean, the Pentagon has never fought aliens, at least as far as we know. So how would they know what that would be like? You don't have an action plan for what you actually do with Godzilla, do you? I mean, maybe they do, but...
Yeah, right.
But, so we have to understand these things, giant monsters, dinosaurs, aliens, and so on. We have to understand them as propagandistic metaphors. And therefore, this isn't about accuracy at all. This is about a more fundamental geopolitical philosophy of us versus them, of we are here, this is our patch of land, this is who we are, they are the other, whoever they are, whether it's, Iraq one year, Syria the next. Sometimes jihadis are good, sometimes jihadis are bad. And we concluded, essentially, that this is one of the reasons why they like these big fictional blockbusters, is because it doesn't tie you down to a particular enemy. If one year you're making a film where Iraq is bad, but a year, 2 years down the line, you're actually approaching some kind of détente or rapprochement with Iraq, you don't want them portrayed as the bad guys, so that film could actually mess up your propagandistic aims not that long after the film comes out. So that's a problem for them. When it's all just aliens or giant monsters rising out of the oceans or whatever, well, they can be a metaphor for whoever the enemy is right now. So it's more about that fundamental neoconservative philosophy of, in order to have a security state, you have to have an enemy. That is what the DOD in particular seem to be primarily concerned with in Hollywood, is getting that mentality across to people, rather than anything to do with, oh yeah, no, you don't fly a plane like that, or if someone tried to attack us like this, we would respond in this way. That's not really what they're doing here. What they're doing here is using mass market fiction as essentially a form of a way of getting people into a particular social and political philosophy and a particular mentality vis-a-vis foreign policy, regardless of who that foreign policy is aimed at. And this is, in turn, part of what allows them to have such a changeable foreign policy, so that one year someone can be our friend and the next year they can be our enemy. And without Hollywood helping them do this, you wonder, would that be such an easy pill for people to swallow? This is the sugar they're helping to get you to swallow it. So yeah, those are what the two pieces are about. One is a kind of study of the Soviet-Afghan war in fiction, and the other one is a more abstract and general piece about why is it that the security state is in Hollywood in the first place. So hopefully I've explained something.
Those are great. Are you kidding? I was like taking notes on how to explain my piece, just listening to your piece. I never know how to talk about something that I've done, like if it's something I've written or a podcast or radio show. But that was an excellent description there, Tom. I think everyone will be very eager to go out and read these. And again, just quickly, you were just sort of saying there, that it's not really about like, well, this is how you would fly an F-16. And that's what they will tell you. And that's why they'll say, oh, it's not a big deal. This isn't really a big deal. And of course it is a big deal. And it's a much bigger deal than you would think. And as you said, it's like when the CIA gets involved, they're not, well, this is really what a spy pen would look like. You should switch that. It's, it's like, if that were the case, then like, I would probably say like, well, whatever. I have no immediate problem.
Yeah, it's how to set up a good dead drop that works for cinema. Okay. I wouldn't care less about that.
Sure.
But when they're deliberately trying to remove subversive material and trying to adapt the material that is there for some kind of much grander and more overarching political philosophy, then that does matter. That really does.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just sort of reminding me of, the way they manipulated Graham Greene's novel in The Quiet American at a time when they wanted to, I think, slowly start convincing people that Vietnam was really important and we all have to kind of care about it and we have to sort of know to a minor degree what's really going on there, and that's why they ultimately made this very distorted Hollywood film about it. But Tom, I know I've kept you way longer than you intended to, so thank you for helping me fill up almost the 2-hour show. And everyone, of course, can go to spyculture.com if they want to listen to Clandestine and all the other work that Tom does. Tom has you've got Patreon as well, and that's just patreon.com/Tom Secker, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if people want to go support Tom, then I definitely encourage them to. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Yes, thank you, Tom, again for helping to fill up the 2 hours. I really had no idea what I was going to do for today's show. It was just sort of one of those moments where you realize, oh fuck, it's Sunday night and I haven't thought of anything. But kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Tom was saying there. I don't know, maybe I have a whole sort of I had like a second hour kind of planned out. And maybe I'll get to some of that. But I would just say, I know some people have asked exactly, like what my piece in the journal was, and I haven't spoken too much about it, but maybe I'll explain a little bit, because it was fun listening to Tom talk about his piece, and it just made me want to read it all over again. But my piece in the journal, The Historical Roots of CIA Hollywood Propaganda, is the title of it, and in that I explain historically how this began. But I think people will be interested because I don't really start with the CIA. I mean, I go all the way back to D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation, and talk about at that point what was called the War Department, their sort of quiet support for Birth of a Nation, and the way that Woodrow Wilson helped to promote the film, or at least the notion that he was a big supporter of it was certainly played up and used. But I talk about that. Then I go into the whole the first motion picture unit, which was an Air Force unit that was involved in World War II. I talk about the various sort of ways that they I have to sort of like set the stage for how state-sponsored propaganda could operate. And then I sort of use, as the major kind of case studies, I use the CIA's involvement in Animal Farm in 1984, as well as in The Quiet American, the Graham Greene novel, and the way that they manipulated those two films, and ultimately that those were the kind of test cases. That was the original sort of I guess the original kind of groundwork for how all CIA propaganda in Hollywood would essentially kind of fall together. And then I do go into, the sort of more current stuff. I talk about Chase Brandon's sort of career and his sort of entree into the sort of world of CIA propaganda. I also, I mentioned historically as well, 70s and the 80s, what was going on there, some of the ways in which CIA propaganda is used for both good and bad purposes in Hollywood. And then I also talk about the legality of this. Can the CIA legally be spending God only knows how much money on propagandizing the American public and the, international public through Hollywood films? So that is sort of in a nutshell my piece. As you can see right now, I'm not very good at explaining what I've written. So people can go and check out on my website. I've got, I think it should be like the first post there. If you go to porkinspolicyreview.com, you will see I have the abstract from my article. So you can check that out if you want to get a little bit more of a flavor for all of that. I know I've gotten a few more people asking about getting copies of the journal. I'm working on that. A big thank you to Dark Alliance, who just signed up to Patreon, again at the $5 level. Thank you so much. Of course, every $1 helps, $1 donation one time helps. But I'm really very appreciative of people that are subscribing at the $5 level. And I know that you Dark Alliance, you asked about getting a copy of the journal. I am in the process of doing that. It's going to take probably somewhere between 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks for me to get another shipment of journals. I got a whole bunch, but I've already sort of promised those to a bunch of people, including Jenny Watson, who's in the chat room right now. I do have a journal for you, Jenny. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm going to do my best. You can also contact Wiley directly. Wiley is the publisher of the journal, and if you contact them at cs-journals@wiley.com, you can inquire about purchasing a single issue of the journal. And they're actually pretty good about getting back to you. It might take a few days, but their customer service is pretty good. They'll get back to you. They'll ask how many you want. Let them know that it's just for personal use. You're not an institution like a university or college or anything like that. And you can get that. But anyway, I thought, there was sort of something, we were talking about all this sort of CIA propaganda and, the way that Homeland in particular this season has really kind of been channeling the phenomenon known as quote, fake news, whatever that really means. It really doesn't mean, it basically now it just means, stuff I don't agree with or, stuff I don't like. Some of it is obviously fake, and that's on both sides. Like I think Pissgate is fake, but I think, pretty much everything that Donald Trump says is also fake. But one of the benefits, I think, of this fake news phenomenon or this movement of fake news, and I think the one that in many ways is perhaps the biggest kind of added benefit is that it has essentially not only put us into camps that we have to support wholeheartedly and never look back, and we've got to attack the other person, but it's basically turned every kind of discussion into this hateful argument back and forth. And Aaron and I spoke about this on last week's episode. Aaron Franz and I, we were sort of talking about the fact, you can't really have a discussion anymore. Everything is just sort of arguments. And basically, because of this insistence on talking about quote unquote fake news, all we're really doing is to just sort of, we're not actually informing people or informing ourselves on anything. And a lot of things are just kind of being swept under the rug or completely missed and ignored, and an event that just 2 days ago on March 26th, it just sort of flew right by, was the second anniversary of the brutal Saudi, I don't even want to call it war, with Yemen, but the Saudi onslaught of Yemen. March 26th marked the 2-year anniversary since the Saudi monarchy began carpet bombing their neighbor to the south, Yemen. And Sunday also saw, some of the largest protests ever. They must be the largest protests in Yemen, but hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I saw estimates between like 200 to 300,000 people gathered in the capital of Sana'a to protest this. Now, this has generally been, well, I guess before I even get to that, did anybody pay attention to this or know that this was even going on? Probably not. I barely knew about it, and I've been, telling people to kind of follow Yemen and to keep an eye out for it. It almost slipped my mind because, again, I was, you're consumed with all these other things going on in life itself. But when you're, the fake news thing, Donald Trump supporters aren't going to be talking about Yemen. Those are the Democrat supporters. They don't give a shit about Yemen. We got to be much more concerned with, whatever, the latest bogus, Russian something or other. We got to impeach him. So let's find some other, bullshit sort of charges that, Donald Trump knew this one Russian guy one time they met. So therefore he must be the, in cahoots with Putin. But anyway, hundreds of thousands gathered in the capital of Sana'a to protest this. Mainly, or it was described in, if you were to look up, and I'll have some links in the show notes. These were, supporters of the Houthi group. So this is Ansarullah, group, which is the sort of, I guess it's kind of like the, official kind of like political name for those who support the Houthis, as well as former President Ali Abdullah Saleh's General People's Congress. And the two of them have been in line for some time now, and this in some ways kind of their alliance early on several years ago, that kind of set the ball in motion for the Saudis and the various Gulf states to become more involved. Ali Abdullah Saleh, of course, was the former president for about 30 odd years. He was ousted, in the Arab Spring, and this, President Hadi ran unopposed and won, surprisingly. And he was put in place by the Americans. Saleh, of course, was a long-term, CIA deep state asset. He was very much, a part of the American apparatus or American imperialist apparatus. But, like others, like Mubarak and, other people, the, Ben Ali family in Tunisia, he had sort of, I guess, overstayed his welcome, and he was, pushed out the door. And then later aligned himself with the Houthis, a group that he had never really liked. Previously he had persecuted. But this was a big deal. For the fact that the capital Sana'a is in control of the Houthis and Saleh's forces. The President Hadi is I believe is still in Saudi Arabia, in exile. And President Saleh, who is rarely seen in public, particularly after we helped bomb the presidential palace. He was very badly burned. This is, again, a couple of years ago in the Arab Spring. He was rarely seen in public. He even made a brief appearance on Sunday in Sana'a. And this really kind of struck me as one of these, the benefits, the added benefits of the constant bickering over fake news and what's real, and, we gotta get this pedo and that pedo, and we gotta expose everybody. We're not seeing 200,000 people protesting that the Saudi monarchy, this inbred, disgusting, oppressive organization of old fat men, okay, bombing, literally destroying this country, the poorest country in the Arab world, completely just nobody cares. Everybody is just kind of missing the whole point. And that's one of these added benefits because we have no idea what's really going on in Yemen. Well, I'll give you just a few little kind of things that's going on. There's lots of rumors and reports that the Trump administration is about to increase military and intelligence support in Yemen. This should be a very worrying trend. If we've already lost at least one special forces guy in Yemen. And his name has definitely been dragged through the mud in order to prop up the God Emperor Trump. Now, and they could very well use the war in Yemen as their way of putting Iran on further notice. Because, of course, the narrative in the media is always that the Houthis are really just a proxy of Iran. Now, there's some truth to that, obviously. Iran and we're really talking not necessarily about Iran, but the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard. They have supported the Houthis with weapons and money. But if you really kind of dig further into that whole story, they're not an Iranian proxy. They never have been. They never will be. They are, I think it's disingenuous. It's sort of like saying, well, the Houthis don't really have any grievances. There's really no reason that they're protesting or rebelling against President Hadi and the Saudis. No, they have real reasons, and there are lots of, and they're not the only group there. But that becomes the whole story. They're an Iranian proxy, so Trump might very well see this as, this is great. This is how, because I guess he's not going to start bombing Iran right now. After he loses General Flynn, but let's send some more special forces. Let's up our drone strikes. Let's do more in Yemen, and this is a way that we can say we're fighting the Iranians. Just recently, Defense Secretary Mattis asked for the removal of a whole bunch of prohibitions that the Obama administration had put in place. That and by getting rid of these, this would allow the Pentagon to support Emirati operations against the Houthis. So this could be surveillance, intelligence, refueling, and operational planning assistance without having to go through the White House for approval. Now, I'm sure that the Pentagon, to a degree, already kind of operates like this. But when the defense secretary is asking for the removal of all, even the sort of formal channels that you have to go through, assume that this means a huge, this is like a huge sort of blank check for them to do whatever they want in Yemen. And we've also seen this dramatic increase in jihadi attacks. Again, just a few days ago, 10 people were killed in Ghouta, which is the capital of Laj province, which is in the south. They attacked a government building. We've suddenly seen the resurgence of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, which had sort of been decimated and disappeared. Now all of a sudden, they're all over Yemen. They're carrying out attacks. And all of this is just sort of ignored because, again, I think in part, we're all obsessed with the fake news. That's what's really important, is understanding, this is not really true. This is what really happened, and we got to go against him, and it's not the Russians. Oh, no, it is the Russians. Who gives a shit about that when, one of the largest humanitarian disasters, I think, that we're going to have seen in a decade is already unfolding in Yemen. And just to kind of, emphasize this a little bit, I'll go from just a brand new recent UNICEF report. I know UNICEF is part of the globalist plot to take over the world, so take it or leave it. But about 2.2 million children in Yemen are malnourished. Over 500,000 are in severe acute malnutrition. So they're very close to dying. 1 in 2 children in Yemen is now stunted because of malnutrition. Cholera, dengue fever, and scabies is on the rise like you wouldn't believe all over Yemen. The lack of clean water, because of course the Saudis are bombing lots of the places where, water treatment facilities, desalination facilities, because there's not a lot of water in Yemen to begin with. Yemen has always had a water crisis problem, in part because of the water going towards the production of cotton. But there's not that much water to begin with. So now cholera, of course, bad water leads to more cholera. Diarrhea is very dangerous if you were to get diarrhea in Yemen, especially if you're a kid. People forget, diarrhea kills a ton of people. It kills more people than measles does nowadays. To quote the recent Dave Chappelle stand-up special where he talks about this. And even more disconcerting, child marriages are on the rise in Yemen. So we're, very young girls being married off for money and other things to some very nasty people. And the recruitment of child soldiers is becoming younger and younger in Yemen. And there are so many different political and armed factions in Yemen all vying for power that it's so sad, but we've now finally pushed Yemen into almost complete failed state status. You've got Houthis, you've got Saudi factions, people the Saudis are paying off. You've got the pro-government Hadi supporters. You've got Saleh's GPC. You've got the Southern Secessionist movement in Yemen, which wants nothing to do with anything that's going on in the north. And, that's a whole other can of worms. You've got AQAP, ISIS, various jihadi groups, plus local tribes that have, banded together. It's very easy to get assault rifles in Yemen. Local tribes, forming their own military factions. All of these groups, vying for power, having these sort of sham negotiations with the Saudis in Kuwait and a few other places, not really going anywhere. And all the while, as this sort of, stuff is escalating, nobody cares. Nobody even knows it's going on. And, I know this is sort of, a little kind of off topic from what we were talking about earlier, but as I've said several times on the show, I have a great affinity for the people of Yemen. I grew up with a lot of Yemenis as a child. I was very close with one Yemenis family in particular. So there's a huge Yemeni population in New York, in Brooklyn in particular. So I've always had this sort of affinity, for the people of Yemen. And it's an amazing culture too, beyond all of that. But seriously, it's this massive humanitarian crisis that's unfolding. And this isn't just like, Trump isn't paying attention. Where are the Hollywood liberals? Where is Amy Goodman? Where are the Bernie bros at on Yemen? Where's anybody really, for that matter? I don't see the libertarians, really, talking about Yemen. They'll talk about other things, as dangerous. We shouldn't go after Iran and all these things. But nobody is looking at the poorest country in the Arab world that is rapidly unraveling into what could be a massive humanitarian crisis. The Saudis have blockaded virtually the whole damn sea around them. Nothing is coming in. They control the border. They can fly, air raid missions all over the place, dropping bombs, blowing things up. They've got the Americans now, possibly getting more involved in all of this. And, it's like, to what end? That's what's so crazy too with this is have the Saudis even achieved anything? No, not really. They're not in control of the capital. It's not as if they're about to kind of get control. I mean, you're talking about 200, possibly 300,000 people gathering one day. That's a big deal. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining me. I will be coming back to you next week. So until then, I will be talking to you very soon.
news and information you can trust. This is American Freedom Radio. Freedom, American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
Nutritious food is real body armor. It builds muscle, burns fat, improves digestion, and feeds the entire body the nutrients it needs. Did you know the U.S. government banned the hemp plant from growing in the United States and classified it as a Schedule I drug to hide it behind the marijuana plant? People have been confused about this plant for over 80 years, and many still don't know what hemp is. So now you know hemp is not marijuana, and marijuana is not hemp. They are different varieties of the same species. HempUSA.org wants the world to know these basic facts and to help people understand that hemp protein powder is the best kept health secret you need to know about. Remember, hemp protein powder contains 53% protein, is gluten-free, anti-inflammatory, non-GMO, and is loaded with nutrients. Call 888-910-4367, 888-910-4367, and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you. Only at HempUSA.org.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.